Are you a stump? A changeling? We're gonna find out. Next. I'm Mike Quackenbush, and this is Till We Make It. Throughout my career, I've been very fortunate because I have worked in front of the cameras as a professional wrestler, referee, ring announcer, and commentator. But I've also had the opportunity to work behind the scenes in wrestling as a promoter, booker, agent, coach, and consultant. And I bring the sum of all those experiences and share them with you right here on Till We Make It. If you're down with that, what are you waiting for? Join the Till We Make It tribe. Subscribe right now. Or if you want to take your participation in Till We Make It, if you want to take your education to the next level, consider joining our community over on Patreon. There you can unlink 464 exclusive posts, and that includes 100 exclusive videos you will never see here on the channel. This past Monday, I published one, which is essentially a cautionary tale about nostalgia and ticket sales in professional wrestling. If you've got a PayPal account or a credit card, then you can join this lineup of awesome folks for as little as $5 a month. Just follow the link down below in the descriptus. In my experience, there are 6 types of performers who are extremely difficult to work with in professional wrestling for a variety of reasons, which we're going to break down in today's video. But just to make sure we're all clear, let's first differentiate routine challenges of doing this job. Overcoming a language barrier, that's a routine challenge of doing this job. Adjusting what you do for various body types, from the biggest super heavyweight down to the tiniest cruiserweight, that is also just a routine challenge of being a professional wrestler. Sharing the ring with someone that is inexperienced, like being booked against a rookie who's got a bad case of nerves, that doesn't mean that other person is difficult to work with. That's just a routine challenge of the job. And none of those things are part of today's discussion because I don't believe they actually make someone difficult to work with. Which begs the question then, well, what does? What does make someone a difficult wrestler to work with? In all, I've got 6 examples in mind. We're going to break each and every one of them down. Before we dive into it today, would you please leave a like-a-palooza on today's video? It helps the channel to grow. Ready? Let's start from the top. The one that springs to mind before all others is the wrestler who designs the match solely in service to their own ego. Not in service to what the booker has asked for, not in service to what the audience wants or needs, not in service to the promotion at large or to the ensemble, not to you as their opponent. Everything that goes in the match is there to please them, to validate their self-esteem or self-image in some way. And if it happens to end up also serving the audience or what the booking sheet says, well, that's really an afterthought. Everything is designed first and foremost to please their ego. Those wrestlers, in my experience, are rather difficult to work with. Pro tip for you. What do you do when your opponent's ego is becoming the match's primary concern? Seek out the aid of a producer or agent, some neutral third party who can inject the creative process with a degree of objectivity. Closely related to that first one is the second on my list. It is someone who thinks only their ideas are good. Only their ideas are worth putting into the match. Now, in an ideal scenario, the creation of a match, the calling of the spots and the structure and everything that's going to make up the performance should be a collaboration. There's you, there's your opponent, maybe there's a producer or agent adding some ideas. There might be someone senior on the roster who contributes, or maybe your mentor or coach is part of that process as well. And together, all the players whittle down all the potential options out there into what will actually go into the match. Now granted, every once and again, somebody does show up with absolutely no ideas to offer, but that's extremely rare. A serious working pro is going to show up with ideas at the ready and knows to present them at the right time. Unfortunately, there are wrestlers out there who seem to think that only their ideas are worthy of being put into the match, and everybody else's ideas are not so worthy. Some time ago, I had a trainee exactly like that. He was convinced that he had a monopoly on all the good ideas and everybody else's ideas were secondary. And he would use lines like this: "That's not what the match needs. Listen to me." Or, "I've got a better idea than that. How about?" Or, "Save that for next time. Instead, let's do what I came up with." And the end result of this was, after months and months of matches, that an entire locker room's worth of people asked to never be booked on with him again. I would love to tell you that those particular matches were revolutionary. They were filled with genius ideas unlike anything else on the card. That was never really the case. The only thing this succeeded in doing was limiting the number of people who were willing to work with him. The creation of a match should be a dialogue, and those wrestlers who treat it only as a monologue are difficult to work with, in my experience. This is wholly separate from an instance in which one wrestler has been tasked with putting the match together for the benefit of others. But that's a different topic for a different video. Maybe I'm going to make that video, but that's not today's video. Up third is the wrestler I call the Changeling. This is the wrestler who keeps changing up the match until your entrance music hits. Do you know someone like this? Even if the match is set hours in advance, maybe you've even rehearsed it, they are constantly changing out parts of the match up until the very last minute. They say things like, "Oh, you know what? Instead of on your arm, let's do a whole heat about your leg. And well, guess that means we got to change the finish now, right? We can't keep that the same. And maybe we should be doing more chain wrestling in the Shine. How do you feel about restructuring all of that? And what's that? You've got to head to Gorilla right now? It's our time? Well, hey, can we take that clothesline spot out of the comeback and replace it with the crossbody we did 2 months ago in Tampa? Do you remember that spot?" And it goes on and on with all of these changes right up until you are walking through the curtain. And I think wrestlers who are constantly changing up what's going in the match until the very last moment are difficult to work with. Here's why. By the time I'm walking down the aisle to the ring, so many different ideas for the match have been raised, agreed upon, validated, then changed, negated, replaced, put back into the match in a new shape. It's almost impossible to track what is actually going to make up the performance, let alone recall it clearly and in order. This is an extremely difficult scenario in which to do your best work. Now keep in mind, this is very different from a scenario in which the booker comes to you at the very last minute and says, "We have to change your finish from a Hurricane Rana to a backslide because I just got a note from the promoter about the main event." Okay, there are new marching orders, let's march. That's a different situation. Pro tip for you. If you're working with a changeling and the constant revisions of the match are driving you wild, then stick to your guns, my friend. You know your greatest hits. You know the spots and moves that you've already refined. You've probably road tested them in front of tons of different audiences. So don't be afraid to assert yourself. Say something like, "I'd prefer if we'd leave that hope spot intact the way it was originally called. I'm confident in it. It always gets a great reaction. Let's not change that, please." A not too distant cousin of the changeling is the indecisive wrestler. Also extremely difficult to work with. This is someone who is always kicking the decision can further down the road as match time just keeps creeping closer and closer. They say things like, "Oh, my Shine, I don't know what I want to do. There's so many options. I'll have to get back to you." And What's that? What am I going to do in my comeback? I've got like 6 different options there. I'm not really sure which one I want to run with tonight. Can I get back to you a little bit later on? And then, of course, you go back to them later on and they say something like, well, I've whittled it down to just 2 or 3, but I don't want to tell them to you because I don't want it to be confusing when we get out there. You might misremember it. So maybe I'll just call to you a little bit closer to when we're going to go. And this goes on and on until somebody's music is playing and you've run out of time. Pro tip for you. Even if someone else is not confident in the choices they are making, you can be confident in yours. So offer up your ideas without qualifying language, like, maybe we could think about this idea a little bit, or without alternatives, like, well, if you don't like that bulldog, I could always do a back suplex. Assert your ideas with clarity and confidence, and then allow that to start to inform the rest of the matchmaking process. Number 5 on my list is the wrestler obsessed with tiny details. They get lost in the extreme minutia of a match to a painstaking degree. And this does make for difficult work. It sounds like this. Remember, it's going to be just 2 stumps in the corner, not 3. And would you please use reverse hammer grip if our hold is going to be facing hard cam? Otherwise, it's traditional hammer grip. And if I feed you my left foot, that's when I need the feed to be counterclockwise. Remember, from that point forward, the whole spot's going to be on the lucha side of the body until you see me lead with my right foot again. Drilling in to this level of detail, one, it's already giving me a headache, but also makes a match needlessly complicated. And I think wrestlers who get stuck in the extreme minutia of the match oftentimes miss some of the bigger picture because they are focusing solely on the physical mechanics of the match. And that means they're not paying equal attention to the structure or to the performance. And all 3 of those departments deserve equal consideration: the mechanics, the performance, and the structure. And if the entire time that you have to collaborate together on the creation of a match is focused solely on tiny details of mechanics, not enough time is being spent on making sure that the match is well structured and that all the performative beats are where they need to be. And the result of trying to catalog and recall all those tiny details can be rather difficult work. Pro tip for you. If all the tiny details are piling up into a mountain that's starting to make you sweat, cut through all of that and say something like this: I need to call the match back to you in its base form. And then go about calling it without focusing on the minutia. Just do the broad strokes. And if you get interrupted while doing it, say, hang on a second, I need to cover everything in its base form, please. Essentially, what you're going to do is take the focus out of the micro view that looks only at the details into a macro view that will allow you to examine the match at large. And we gotta talk about wrestlers that can't be moved around the ring, what are sometimes referred to as a stump. They are a little bit inflexible, a little bit immobile. You can't seem to get them to move to where the spot needs to be. It's almost impossible to put a hold on them. How someone completes wrestling training without learning how to move and give their body to their opponent within the context of a pro wrestling match is practically beyond my comprehension. And I have shared the ring with my share of stumps throughout the years. It's practically impossible to put a wrist lock on them. They stand there like a granite pillar while I am picking their ankle to take them down. Wrestlers like that are difficult to work with. Pro tip for you. If you get 2 lockups into a match and you can already feel that you're in the ring with a stump, go ahead and grab them, get close enough to talk to them. A headlock is the perfect place for this. And just tell them, loosen up. And wait for them to do it. Don't move on. If you're not getting enough, tell them again. I need more from you. Can you loosen up even more? Maybe you have to get specific. Can you loosen up your upper body a little bit for me? But don't move on until you get what you need out of that stump. Because if you just start running the rest of your match and that stump is still rooted in the ground, your match is sailing for disaster. Nobody wants to be thought of as difficult to work with. I know you don't. You wouldn't still be watching. You wouldn't still be here trying to improve every aspect of your game. And it is for people just like you that I wrote 7 Keys to Becoming a Better Performer, a book for fellow pro wrestlers. It's available over on Amazon, either in print or through digital. You can also listen to the audiobook that I read myself over on audible.com. There's a link appearing right now on the screen so you can come and join our community over on Patreon. We would love to have you. And underneath it is a video I think you might be interested in. Give it a click. Start watching now.